I have scuba gear in my garage, full set. BCD, wetsuit, mask, flippers, tank, perfectly colour coordinated. I went for an electric blue as pink wasn't an option. I've used it exactly 0 times in the past 10 years. I also, somewhere out of sight in my house right now so my husband can't see, have 3 drawers of colour-coded yarn, a sewing machine I've never sewn with, and at one point I brought home 12 fertilised chicken eggs on the same drive I bought that sewing machine. If you've got a graveyard of abandoned hobbies sitting in your garage, your cupboard, your car boot, this one's for you. Anyway, this is Anyway, I Have ADHD, a podcast for people whose brains work on a different operating system and nobody gave them the manual. I'm Han, late diagnosed ADHD, mum of 2, founder of NeuroSpice Nation, and still slightly confused by the fact that nobody noticed for 31 years. Not one person. It's almost like they've never met me. Every week we pick apart a different corner of ADHD life. The stuff that's funny now but wasn't at the time, the stuff that's still not funny, and the stuff that's actually useful. No shame, no hustle, no wellness bro energy. Just chaos. Warm chaos. With takeaways and hopefully you feeling slightly less alone or crazy. Today we're talking about the hobby graveyard. You know the one. If TikTok's hobby graveyard trend called you out personally, you're in the right place. Because we're going into why your brain does this and what it actually means. Anyway, let's get into it. Okay, let me just read you the inventory of my hobby graveyard because it is extensive and it is colour coordinated, which honestly should have been the first clue something was going on. There's the full scuba set, BCD, wetsuit that doesn't even fit me anymore, mask, flippers, tank, all of it, all matching. Because if I'm going to abandon a hobby, I'm going to abandon it in a cohesive colour palette. There's the crochet phase, which is technically still very much alive. I have a chest of drawers dedicated to it, 3 drawers of yarn sorted by colour, and I've finished a grand total of 2 projects I'm actually happy with. 2. Everything else gets frogged. That's a crochet term, if you didn't know. It's where you unravel your stitches or rip them out because you've made a mistake. Rip it. Rip it. Rip it. Get it? Anyway. The point is I restart projects constantly because nothing is ever quite right to actually finish. And when something is finished, I put the sweater on and one arm shorter than the other, or the turtleneck's accidentally a balaclava. You get the idea. Before that, it was knitting. Every needle size, circular needles, the kind where you can screw on different tips depending on the size, very flash, the full kit. Somewhere in between came jewellery making, because one day I sat down with my 4-year-old daughter to make beaded bracelets and thought, hey, this is fun, let's step it up a notch. I upgraded myself to actual wire and proper beads like I was opening a shop. Crimping pliers, beading wire, lobster cramps, the whole shebang. It's still sitting in the bag I purchased it all in. Except somehow the beads got loose and now they're just sitting in the bottom of the bag like a sad little beanbag. There's the embroidery hoop with a t-shirt still stretched on it that I attempted exactly once and gave up because I'd forgotten to buy the right needle. And I was not going back to the shop to spend another 2 hours deciding which one I needed. Then let's not forget the 18 months I was vegan. Except I couldn't just be vegan quietly. I had to make it my entire personality. I started a whole vegan brand in society in Sydney. Monthly meetups, a book club somehow got involved, a new vegan restaurant every time. Hundreds of people in the group, actual strangers turning up. It genuinely worked. And then one day I decided I wanted to eat meat again. And I didn't ease in with white meat or anything sensible. I went straight to steak. And I just ghosted the entire thing. No announcement, no goodbye post, nothing. A few months later, someone messaged the page asking if it was still a thing. It was not still a thing. And then there were the candles. Full business. I made custom candles for other businesses to sell under their own branding. Custom scent blends, the whole setup. I loved the branding part especially. Everything I owned smelled like wax and patchouli for about a year. I was still making them 9 months pregnant right up until my stomach got in the way of the pour and I burnt myself. 2nd-degree burns. That was it. Sold the entire kit in one go, shut the business down, done. And then there's the chickens. I had a broody hen, I thought I'd use that to my advantage. Found someone selling fertilised eggs on Facebook Marketplace, out in the middle of nowhere. Drove out there by myself, didn't tell anyone where I was going, no phone reception. A road precariously perched on a cliff's edge, unpaved. My poor little electric car could barely make it. On the way there, I stopped and brought a sewing machine because sure, I was also going to learn to sew that day. Grabbed a couple of pots for some new pot plants while I was at it. Get to this stranger's property to pick up my 12 fertilised eggs and decide, why not throw in 2 baby chicks as well, because they were unbearably cute. On the perilous drive home, we listened to Cher, so I dubbed them Sunny and Cher. I turned up at my best friend's house that day with a box of 12 fertilised eggs, 2 baby chickens and a sewing machine in the back of the car. and she looked at it all and quietly decided she might need to become my full-time carer. Anyway, that's my graveyard. Yours probably has a version of this too, right? Please tell me I'm not the only one. Okay, now we've got that over and done with, let's get into the actual brain stuff, because there's real science behind this, not just a vibe. Turns out the graveyard isn't one story, it's three. First, there's the chase. Dopamine doesn't just fire when you get a reward. It fires in response to anything unexpected. Dopamine doesn't really care about a reward on its own, it cares about the surprise of it. If something turns out better than you expected, dopamine spikes. If it's exactly what you expected, dopamine barely reacts at all. A brand new hobby is, by definition, unpredictable. You don't know yet if it'll be good, what you'll be capable of, how it'll feel. Your brain treats that uncertainty as a reason to pay attention. Hard. Now here's where dopamine receptors come in, specifically a pair called D2 and D3. They basically work as a team. They sit on the dopamine neurons themselves, in a region deep in the midbrain where those neurons live, and act like a dimmer switch. They sense when there's enough dopamine floating around and turn the release down. In a UK brain imaging study, people with ADHD showed lower D2 and D3 receptor levels in that exact region, and that was linked to a stronger, more persistent pull towards new and unfamiliar options, even once it was clearly not the better choice. Basically, a weaker dimmer switch means the dopamine just keeps climbing. So what happens once you're a few weeks into the hobby? Dopamine's whole job is to notice when something surprises you, good or bad. The first time you try crochet, basically everything is a surprise. Will this stitch work? Will this look right? Can I even do this? Your brain is lit up because it genuinely doesn't know. But once you've done it 100 times, there's no surprise left. You already know what's going to happen when you pick up the hook. The dopamine doesn't respond to things it can already predict. So the buzz just quietly switches off. Not because the hobby's got worse, because your brain has finished learning it. That's the crash. Again, it's not that the hobby got worse, and it's not that you ran out of interest exactly. It's that the excitement was never really about the hobby itself. It was about the not knowing. And not knowing doesn't last. It's not built to. But sometimes it's not a slow fade, it's a hard stop. Think the sweater with one arm shorter than the other, or the embroidery hoop with the wrong needle size. Something goes wrong, and instead of pushing through, your brain goes, we're done, forever. Do not ask again. That's a completely different mechanism to the crash, and it's not you being dramatic. Low frustration tolerance is a documented separate ADHD trait. In a study out of the Maryland ADHD program, kids with and without ADHD were given a deliberately frustrating task, and low frustration tolerance was directly linked to ADHD itself, not just explained away by other behavioural stuff going on alongside it. It's measurable and it's specific. Here's why it happens. The same part of your brain that struggles to filter out distractions also struggles to filter a frustration spike once it hits. So instead of a slow build, you go from fine to done in seconds. And there's a second piece on top of that. Once you're in that frustrated state, ADHD brains also tend to struggle shifting out of it again. Not just feeling it hard, but staying stuck in it. Which is exactly why the project doesn't get quietly revisited later. It just stays exactly where you dropped it. We're going to properly dig into this one next week, so if this hit home, stay tuned. So the hobby graveyard is really 3 different stories layered on top of each other. Some things got chased hard and quietly faded, like the crochet. Some things hit a wall and got dropped in the heat of the moment, like embroidery. And some things got interrupted by real life and never made it back on the list, like the candles. Different mechanism, same draw. Here's your one thing this week. You can't argue your way out of a habituation response, so don't try to force yourself to push through and finish things out of guilt, or deprive yourself of that dopamine rush and joy of starting something new. Instead, before buying a new hobby, ask one question. Can I try this cheaper or secondhand first? Op shop the supplies, borrow the gear, do the free trial. That way, when the dopamine response fades, and it will because that's what it's built to do, you're not out hundreds of dollars for finding that out. And if it's the other kind, the hard stop, don't pack it away out of sight. Leave it somewhere you will actually see it. Out of sight means out of mind means it never gets a second chance. You don't have to finish it, just give your calmer, non-frustrated brain the option to look at it again later. So, the scuba gear, the yarn, the wire and beads in the bag, the sewing machine, the candle kit, all of it. It's not a graveyard of failure. It's a graveyard of a brain that got genuinely chemically excited about something new 12 separate times and lived every single one fully while it lasted. That's not a flaw. That's just the shelf life of novelty. Try it cheap next time and let yourself move on without the guilt. Before we go, a very important reminder. This podcast is not a substitute for professional medical or mental health advice. If anything in this episode has stirred up something heavier for you, please reach out to a professional or call Lifeline on 131114. They're there 24/7. Thanks for hanging out with me. If this one hit home, send it to someone with their own color-coded graveyard sitting in a cupboard somewhere. Next week, we're getting into the flip side of the graveyard, because sometimes it's not novelty wearing off, it's rage quitting. That moment where something gets hard or annoying or just isn't going right and your brain doesn't go, keep trying. It goes, nope, that's it. We're never speaking of this again. Turns out that's got its own science too. And it's not the same thing as just giving up. Anyway, I have ADHD, and somewhere in my house there are 12 chickens worth of proof that I contain multitudes. If you're here listening and quietly doing an inventory of your own hobby graveyard right now, you probably do too. New episodes every Wednesday. Follow the show so you don't miss one. And if you forget to follow and then forget the show exists entirely, no judgment. That's why I'm also on Instagram and TikTok at NeuroSpice Nation. Come find me, send me a DM, tell me what's in your hobby graveyard. The scuba gear, the half-finished jumper, the thing you are absolutely going to turn into a business. I genuinely want to hear it. It's not just something I say. If today's helped even a little, a rating or review goes a long way. It's how other spicy brains find the show, and frankly, my ego could use it. Got a hobby graveyard story or literally any ADHD thing you want me to pick apart, validate, and give the full episode treatment? Send it through Instagram or TikTok at NeuroSpice Nation or the contact page at neurospicenation.com. I collect these like Pokemon cards. And remember, you're not broken, you're just a lot. See you next week.